myself again, but it's the only way.
Hi, welcome to Steve Wraith's True Crime Interviews. Delighted to welcome Ricky Gleeson to the platform today. How are you, Ricky?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you? You all right?
Yeah, great, mate. And always good to get new faces on and different people to tell their story. And as always, at the start of the podcast, I go back to the very beginning. And Newcastle is your home, but you've got a little bit of a southern accent, which I think people will pick up on during the podcast. So tell us, you say Newcastle's your home, but are you from Slough originally?
I am from Slough originally, yeah, and it's not a little bit of an accent either, is it? It's quite a strong accent. I'm from Slough originally, and then when I was 12, I moved overnight to South Shields. And, if you'd caught me at 16, 17, I had a different accent than this, but over the years I've lost it. But yeah, Newcastle, from South Shields, I lived in South Tyneside for a long time. And then in my late teens, I moved up to Newcastle, and I don't live there at the moment, but Newcastle is where I class as home. My wife's a Geordie from the West End. She's from Fenham. All my friends are from up there. And yeah, when I say that I'm going home, it's never to Slough.
West End's the best end, by the way, and South Shields is where I was born. I'm a sand dancer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, not a Geordie. I'm a sand dancer, so and I'm proud of it. I've got to be honest. Yeah. Okay, so tell us a little bit about your childhood, mate. Was it a happy childhood?
No, I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say. In hindsight, looking back, no. So I moved to South Shields overnight from a woman's refuge in London because I'd been doing sort of the rounds with my mother there. She was always in abusive relationships. I'd come out of care kind of thing. And yeah, I just got woken up one night and told that the only place that had a bed in the country was South Shields. So that was where we moved to overnight. And obviously Cockney accent, turned up hundreds of miles away from where I'd always been. And I very quickly turned into a bit of a naughty lad at school for attention or whatever. And then slowly but surely, just deteriorated into juvenile delinquent.
Tell us about school. And I mean, you say you school wasn't great for you. I mean, did you struggle at school, or were you intelligent but were just messing around? What was going on at school?
I was a messer arounder. If you're from Shields, you'll know the schools. I went to Mortimer Comprehensive, and I'm one of them. I was one of those students that every report said if he just knuckled down, he'd do very well, because I'm not unintelligent at all. I'm very good at English as well. I seem to have always had an ability, being able to write and things like that. But I started messing around, and from there it just deteriorated. And then I was getting suspended all the time, and I didn't actually do that much of senior school. I think I worked out I probably did about a year and a half, 2 years tops, and then I was permanently excluded by 14. Do you remember? Did you ever hear of Simonside Lodge?
Yes.
Yeah, so I used to go to Simonside Lodge a couple of days a week to try and sort my behavioural problems out. And I've always said that I think if they'd sent me there full time, I would have been all right, but they didn't. They pulled me back out and tried to sort of keep me going in mainstream school. And I'm a firm believer that mainstream school doesn't, it works for most people, but it doesn't work for everybody. And I was one of those people.
No, it doesn't work for everybody. I mean, it's a similarity again that we've got. I mean, I was born in South Shields. I never lived there. I always lived in Gateshead. But again, with school, the class clown, I like to entertain people. And that was at the detriment of my own education. Doing daft things, making people laugh in class, but without your mind on the bigger picture, which was you need to knuckle down and get these exams passed, otherwise you're going to leave school with nothing. But yeah, I mean, with your particular story, when you moved here, I mean, did you have any brothers and sisters, or were you an only child?
No, so I'm an only child, and I moved up there. I've got no family in the area. I have now, funnily enough. It turned out that my uncle years later left the army and ended up in Washington. So now I'm moving back. I've actually got some cousins, but growing up, no, it was me. It was my mother, and that was it. And other than that, it was just my friends sort of became my family kind of thing. My relationship, I don't know if you know the ins and outs of it. My relationship with my mother wasn't good.
No, I don't. I mean, are you okay to talk about that?
Yeah, I'll talk about me. Well, I do my own podcast and we talk about it on there and stuff. But my mother was, you know, she was really damaged herself, really she couldn't look after herself. So it was quite hard to look after me. And as the years went on and my behavior got worse, it was even harder to look after me. She was an alcoholic. She was always in an abusive relationship. She always picked the wrong man kind of thing. So, and then, you know, it just sort of deteriorated. I was thrown out the house by 15, and by which point I was feral anyway. So I say I was thrown out the house. I wasn't really there much anyway. And this is, you'll know yourself, this is lots of people, lots of young people from the Northeast live like this, you know, and they're living at their mates' houses and stuff. And, you know, they're just constantly in trouble. I think I've said before, it was nothing serious. You look at my criminal record, it's not a serious charge on it. It's nothing that you'd think, oh, what a bad person. It's all very petty stuff, but it was just relentless, non-stop, always in trouble.
What was the straw that broke the camel's back at school? Why were you excluded from school?
I cut a teacher's hair. I cut my teacher's hair. And you know what? It's that class clown thing, though, because it was the one class that I was in with my best friend, who I'm still best friends with now. And he wasn't like me. And his family, you know, are completely the opposite of my family. And he was a good student and everything. But we were just in this one class together, geography. I was a class clown. He was my best mate. We were sat next to each other. I used to act up the whole time. He was getting told off for something. And I thought that it would be very funny to lean across. We were using scissors at the time and cut the teacher's fringe, and that was it. That was my time at school done. And then after that, they sent me to an hour a day school. Tutor Reed. Do you know Tutor Reed?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Excuse me. They sent me to an hour a day school to which ticks the boxes for your minimum education. By law, it was 5 hours a week at that time. You have to do 5 hours of senior education a week. So that's why I went there. But when I got there, they asked me to colour things in. And I was like, no, I think I went 2 or 3 times and just said, no, that's not for me. And then I never went back. And I you know, there's lots of people like me. When I was younger, I fell through the cracks. Nobody came to chase me up. You know, it was sort of easier to just leave me be. So I would say by 14 and a half, I just stopped going to school completely. That was it. I was done. I never went back to school at all. Never done any education at all.
Did you do anything sport related? I mean, sometimes we have people on the podcast who say, well, I didn't stick in at this, but, you know, I actually enjoyed doing sport. I was there for the football. I was there for the rugby.
At school, no, I can honestly, by the end, I hated school. You know, there's no two ways about it. And this is why I say that school isn't for everyone. I hated it. Every day was a battle for me going to school. The moment I walked in, I was battling with the teachers. And maybe I caused a lot of that for myself through my behavior. But at the same time, it just became a ridiculous cycle of, I was only going into school to get into trouble. There was no, I wasn't learning anything. I think, what I do remember is there was 2 teachers there, both maths teachers, and I did well in maths. And they were the only 2 teachers that I can look back at and say they got me. They got that there was something wrong and that I needed teaching differently from most other pupils. And one of them, a little story, one of them used to see me start messing about and he would put a 20 pence piece down, which in the early 90s was a lot of money, isn't it? That gets quite long on lunch break. Yeah. Get an ice cup. You get an ice cup and a cigarette for that on your lunch break. So,
yes. And a match.
Yeah, and a match. So yeah, he played golf and he used to put a 20 pence piece down and get his putter out, put me in the back of the room and get me to try and hit this 20 pence piece for 5 minutes or so. And then he would tell me to sit back down and do my work. It's only now that I look back that I realized what he was doing. He could see that I was starting to mess about. He broke my concentration. I sat back down. I topped the exam straight away and then got moved up a set. And I remember as I got moved up a set, he asked me to stay in the set that I was in because he didn't want me to go up and not be taught by him. But he said it was up to me. And I was like, well, I've earned it. So they moved me up to the top set. And within 6 months, they kicked me straight out of that class through my behavior because there wasn't that person. And another one was just, he was a legend of the school. He was an old guy called Mr. Mitchison. He used to wear the school uniform because he thought it was unfair that, we had to and they didn't. He was one of those type of characters. And he would start fighting me. If he saw me messing about, he would come over and start like grabbing my neck and stuff. And he knew all these chokeholds and stuff. But again, it was just breaking my concentration. Do you know what I mean? And taking my mind off everything and then tell me to work again. And then I would work again. And I did well in maths and English, respective teachers. So, but other than that, I detested school.
Were you a good mixer? Did you get on with people? Did you make friends easily at that age?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Looking back, I was a bit of, I was always attracted to the bad crowd, when they say, did you fall in with the wrong crowd? I actively sought out the wrong crowd. But at the same time, I look back now and I've still got lots of friends on my Facebook that knew me in school that weren't But and they all say you were a nice kid. There was nothing, you know. I was sort of social comedian, always have been, still am. So yeah.
I mean, you know, being from another area, although, you know, you were there from birth, I guess you were brought up in South Shields. I mean, was there any time that you felt, you know, bullied, or was there anything like that happening at school for you?
I was known as Cockney Ricky. Everybody knew where I was coming from. I was never given grief because of the fact that I wasn't from South Shields. It was, you know, it was accepted. Shields was my home. As for bullying, I'm always sort of, I don't know if it was a different world back then. I can't sit here and say that I was bullied. I can't sit here and say that I wasn't bullied by certain people. At the same time, I can't say that I didn't bully people. Do you know what I mean? It was sort of, I was never badly bullied. I don't feel like I was bullied, but at the same time, some people gave me shit. I gave other people shit. That was the way of the world back then, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean? It was sort of working out.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day when we were at school as well, I mean, you got a thing called options. I mean, was that a little bit of a wake-up call? It was for me, because I remember the headmaster coming into school and coming into the class and asking everybody what their options were going to be and what do you want to do for your exams and what are you looking at doing when you leave school. And I wanted to be an actor, and I was actively pursuing that from the age of 7. I went into a theatre school on a Saturday morning from 11 years of age, and I carried that through until 18. So my mindset as being the class clown was, I don't need to study because I'm going to be an actor. And the headmaster hated that. He absolutely hated it. And he went, "You'll never be an actor." I got hauled over the desk. I got, he had us by the throat, on numerous occasions. Back in the good old days when teachers could discipline a kid, and really. I'm glad I proved him wrong. But from your perspective, did you have a career path that you were looking at that time?
Do you know what? For a long time, everyone thought that I was going to go into acting. It was easily the strongest subject. I say subject. It was what I was good at in school. I think a lot of people, myself included, for a long time thought that I was going to go off into drama college, but I don't think I made it to options. And by 14, I'd started taking drugs, and that became a very instant problem, and it was clear that I was sort of going nowhere. And by 15 I was homeless, just before 16, so careers just disappeared out the window, and I lost a lot of years to homelessness and drug addiction. So,
okay, well, let's look at that. I mean, my age, talking around about the 13, 14-year-old, I was going to the school disco, and we would go meet at the municipal car park. Somebody would have nicked some vodka from their dad's drinking cabinet. Somebody would have nicked some wine. Somebody would have nicked the can, and we would all have all the lads would meet up, would all share our respective drinks. Some of us would be sick. Some of us would whitey, and somebody would be bringing the cigarettes, and would all be like men at 13 and 14, then go to the local disco, and you'd end up either scoring with the local girl or having a fight. But from you, I never had drugs at that age. Well, you were getting into drugs. What kind of drugs were you messing around with?
So we used to do all of that stuff as well, but I started off also, as well as drinking in Marine Park, smoking a bit of reefer. I also used to, I fell into sort of solvents, and I used to sniff light fluid and butane gas. That was the first drugs that I used when I was 13. And LSD. I took a lot of LSD growing up.
Wow.
Well. So yeah, at 13 as well. So I look back now and realize that they're hard drugs. LSD is a long lasting, very hard psychedelic. And I took quite a bit of that growing up, and also with the lighter fluid and the gas, sort of looking back at my behavior now, I realized that I used to do that on my own quite a lot.
Glue bags as well, were you into that?
No, and it's one of these things, right, where I would tell myself, well, that I'm not a glue sniffer, so that's all right. You're just doing lighter fluid and gas. Do you know what I mean? Now I look back, I think it's all the same. Do you know what I mean? It didn't progress to glue bags, but it started off with solvents, then moved into sort of amphetamines, and you get your party drugs, ecstasy, and then when I was homeless, I ended up in Bristol, where I started smoking heroin, and I smoked heroin for a couple of years.
So go back. I mean, at that age, school age, I mean, was it easy to get those kind of drugs at that time? Because again, my social circle, other than school, I went to school 10 miles away. My parents took us out of state education, put me into private education. So I wasn't mixing at school with the locals. However, I was playing out in the street or playing football on the field with locals who were easily into it. I remember a guy who was heavily into glue, and then he did exactly what you did. He moved through the he moved up the drug ladder, if you like. And he was the one who was on magic mushrooms. He was the one who was on LSD. He was the one who was on this and that. And he progressed to heroin. And yeah, I mean, for me, it wasn't something that I would have said was easily obtainable. Certainly was nobody hanging around saying, do you want to try this? You had to actively go and chase it. So were people coming to you, or were you looking for it, looking for the next high?
Do you know what? You just said two things there that stood out. You said you were playing out, right? So I never played out. I just hung around.
Right.
You know what I mean? I wasn't playing out. I was just out from the moment, from the moment I could be out my house until late at night. I was out. I never went home. It's a weird one because I lived up in Simonside, but I hung around down in South Shields town centre. So there was no, I didn't go home for my dinner or anything like that. And I didn't feel welcome at home kind of thing. For me, the house was somewhere that I slept and that was about it. So there's that. I never played out. I was hanging around. And your guy that was progressing through the drugs was probably hanging around. Do you know what I mean? And there's a difference. And I wouldn't be able to tell you how I got introduced to it, but drugs were easy to find. We knew where to get them from. Light fluid and gas you just bought from the shop. And that was probably the worst part about it. They're just sort of easily obtainable legal substances that you happen to be able to get high off. So, that you don't need to go and see a drug dealer to get yourself a can of Zippo lighter fluid. The
experiences on LSD must have been mind-bending. I mean, you can have bad trips as well. I mean, did you have bad trips?
Yeah, I had a lot of bad trips, and me and my friends sort of talk about it now. I don't know why I took it so much because I was always having bad trips, and a lot of my drug use doesn't make sense. A lot of it doesn't make sense at all. But yeah, I took a lot of LSD. I sort of threw up my teens, and then I knocked that on the head in my late teens. And took a lot of ecstasy, and sort of in my mid-20s I calmed down, but then I replaced it with alcohol. So and I'm 11 months sober today from alcohol, and out of all of them, it's been a constant stream of problems, substance problems. Out of all of them, alcohol is the one that absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, brought me to my knees. So
you've touched on it. Your relationship with your mum wasn't good. I mean, during that time where you were getting addicted, and she's an alcoholic, so she has her own battle. But at the time, was she not picking up on the fact that you were out more and you were taking these drugs? Was there no parental concern then?
Yeah, there was. She was always concerned. So I just think you obviously don't know this, but my mum took her own life when I was 25. She was 42 as a really bad alcoholic. And, I'm always really honest about my mum's faults, but I always like to sort of clear up. My mum loved me. My mum adored me. She did her best, which wasn't very good. And she did care, and she knew that I was falling into these issues, and it broke her heart. But there wasn't really a lot she could do by then. We'd got to a stage in our relationship where I wasn't parentable because she hadn't parented me, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? There was so much damage done through her not being able to look after herself, which meant that she couldn't look after me, which meant by the time I was 15, I did what I wanted and I didn't really care whether it upset her or not. So,
yeah, well, God bless your mother. I hope she rest in peace, from my perspective. The young offending stuff, then let's move on to that. Yeah. From your perspective, was this mischief? Was this getting in with the wrong crowd, or was this to fund your habits?
It's just a bit of everything, to be honest. I was just I was a serial young offender, which there's a statistic, isn't there? That serial young offenders are a statistic. I was a serial young offender, the type that you read about, constantly in trouble on paper, bad person, 42 convictions by the time I was 21. Got arrested over 100 times, knew the police, they knew me. One of them, though, they didn't think that I was a bad person. There was no sort of, when they arrested me, everyone was polite to each other. I was never, they wouldn't have me down as one of the horrible people kind of thing that they were used to dealing with. I just couldn't stay out of trouble, Steve. I just, for all sorts, for thieving, fighting, criminal damage, nothing ever serious. I mean, I know that's serious to a lot of people, but in the eyes of the law, nothing mega. I wasn't some career criminal. And I say fighting, I wasn't hurting anybody. I was 7.5 stone. Could have punched anybody for hours and I wouldn't have hurt them. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, it was just I just constantly got into trouble. It was just part of my life, and I had been since I was like 14. I started getting arrested, and then towards the end, 17. A lot of it's to do with homelessness, because when you're homeless, eventually there are no consequences to being caught by the police.
Can you remember your first? Can you remember your first crime out of it? The first thing that you were actually charged with and you went to court for?
Pushing a wall down in South Shields. I wasn't there. It's weird. I only just realised that I got arrested for that. Spent hours in the police cell, and I think I got a charge, criminal damage charge or something, a caution or something. But I wasn't even there. Do you know what I mean? It didn't matter. I still ended up getting charged for it. So my first charge. I wasn't there. I didn't do it. Little things. The slide, South Shields Fair slide got burnt down. Again, I wasn't there. I got arrested for it. I think I spent like 20 hours in the cells. I got released eventually, but I'm like, I wasn't even there. And yeah, from there, I can't. To be honest, I looked back at my criminal record because I had to get it because I'm in the forces now, and I had to get it to sort of show them to let me in. And it's a lot of stuff that I just don't remember, and it's quite embarrassing reading it because, like I said, they're so petty. It's shoplifting, criminal damage, bike theft. And then in my later teens, I started burgling shops, and that's what I went to young offenders for because I was sort of progressing and getting to the point where it was becoming how I made money. You know what I mean? So,
what was your view on the police?
Yeah, it's a weird one. I wouldn't. Yeah, at the time, I would have said that. Oh, I hate the police. I don't hate the police. I've met some. Even during those times, I've met some very nice police officers. I met some wankers. I like in all forms of life. Except they've got authority behind them, and I've met some absolute wankers, bullies that can only behave the way they behave because they're in that uniform. And I took a few kick-ins off the police that weren't warranted. But there's been a few that I've met along the way that were nice people, and I remember one in particular. My wife and I, she was my girlfriend at the time. We were homeless together, and I broke into the university halls and stayed in an empty room, and we'd sort of been found, and the guy that was sort of in charge of it had rung the police, and the police turned up, and he was asking us about our lives. And he found out we were homeless, and he found out that my wife was from an Asian background, was supposed to have an arranged marriage, and run away to be with me, etc., etc. And you could tell that he really felt for us. And then his colleague came out and said, "No, I've got to arrest him." And this guy just point blank refused to arrest us and went back in. And this copper was arguing with the guy that wanted us arrested, just saying, "I'm not arresting them." Do you know what I mean? You need to find out, and things like that. There's sound people in all walks of life, isn't there? And as I've got older, we need the police. The police need to be supported a lot more so that they can go and do the jobs that the likes of you and I want them to do rather than some of the stuff that they have to do. Take from that what you will.
Yeah. Tell us how you ended up on the streets, Ricky.
I got thrown out at 15 years old. Yeah, that was it. I got thrown out the house, told don't come back here anymore. And then from there I was staying at my mates' houses, and eventually you can only stay at your mates' houses for so long. Eventually you run out of options. And you end up sleeping outside. And then, that's it. You're on that spiral of homelessness that once you're in it, it's incredibly hard to get out of. And that, out of everything, that is probably what defines me the most as a human being, the fact that I was homeless for so long.
I mean, that first night on the street, I've never been through that. And I would like to think that I would never happen, but you can never say never. You never know what's going to happen in your life, what dramatic turn a life can take. That is the beauty of life in a lot of ways. We all have different experiences. I believe we've all got a path to walk on. But yeah, that first night for you, what was it like? Were you a compass mentis? I mean,
I slept in Chubby Brown's scrapyard in Westow. I remember it. That was the first time I ever slept outside because I had nowhere to sleep, and I had to go. And I sort of climbed the walls. Scrapyard's gone now, but people from South Shields, sort of Westow area in the early 90s, will probably remember Chubby Brown's scrapyard. It was sort of in amongst all the back lanes, a big square surrounded by back lanes, your northeastern back lanes and stuff. And yeah, we used to go and smoke weed there. So that's how I knew of it. And then I went and sort of climbed into a compartment and sort of realized I was sleeping outside. I've got to sleep outside. It's only now that I look back, I think, fuck hell, I was so young. I wasn't even 16 at the time. I was about 7.5 stone at that point in my life. So I was just this tiny little skinny thing climbing into this little sort of shed style thing and sleeping there for the night. And I remember being cold. And then, yeah, from there, you know, it descended, and by I'd say my sort of 16, 17, you know, I was a real down and out. Like there's no getting away from it. I was a real down and out.
I mean, you know, tell us about the pitfalls of that. I mean, you know, we see dramatizations, you know, where, you know, homelessness is portrayed. Is it realistic, some of this, that the show? I mean, I can't imagine that it is, but I mean, there is, I guess, a homeless community and within the area who, you know, who will have their own chain of command. Maybe there will be good people, there will be bad people. Tell us a little bit about it.
It's exactly that. You know, you meet, it is a community, and I still see them. You know, I see them in every town that I go to. You see them hanging around, and they all know each other. And it's a cycle. That's the problem, is that homelessness becomes a cycle, and the longer you're in it, the harder it is to get out of, because it becomes like anything. It just becomes your way of life, and you know, you live in hour to hour a lot of the time. You know, you're not even living day to day. You live in hour to hour. You're working out where you're going to be in an hour's time. You're constantly problem solving. I've seen some stuff about it. I do some reading up on it, about why it's so hard to break out of that cycle, and why so many people fail a few times before they finally sort of crack it. You know, there's so many problems that you need to solve, and so much that you're thinking about, that when you suddenly get given a flat, for instance, this happened to me. You get given a flat, you get given the keys to the flat. There you go. You're not homeless anymore. And then you're in a flat with nothing to do, and you don't know how to live. Do you know what I mean? And your community's disappeared from you all of a sudden. Do you know what I mean? Because your community lives outside, and you see each other on the streets. And you haven't got a problem to solve, and you've got to pay bills, which was too much for me. You know, the whole idea of, all right, now what do I do, paying bills? And I ended up just in a flat with a light bulb and a mattress, and eventually you sack it off, and then people are like, oh, you know, he's made himself homeless, which technically you have, but it's a lot deeper than that. And like you said, with the whole community, you know, it becomes who you know and what you know. Yeah, I mean, there are some bad people. It's a dog eat dog world. Everybody is struggling to survive down there. That is as poor as you get, and with poverty, people get desperate. So, you know, there is a lot of sort of robbing each other going on, and a lot of bullying going on, and, you know, vulnerable people getting joeyed, I think is a term that you might have heard, you know, and sort of, just getting used for their gyros back in the day, I think.
Yeah.
You know, it used to be that, you know, gyros. People knew when each other's gyro day was, which amongst your friends, you know, that's fine, but you'd have to watch out. Oh, so and so knows it's my gyro day. I've got to stay away from him. Do you know what I mean? Whereas other people, you'd be like, oh, it's, you know, so and so's gyro day. I'll go see them. You know, and you help each other, but yeah, at the same time, like, it's a dog eat dog world down there because people are desperate.
It might be a daft question, but did you have a routine? Because I can imagine, I've often wondered about cool, like winter, for example.
Yeah.
You know, I would imagine that, you know, it's different in the winter to the summer. But did you have a routine? Was there a specific time and place that you went to somewhere to get washed, and then you went to try and get a meal somewhere?
So, you know, I used to use the soup kitchens and the Cyrenians up on Westgate Road. But I've been homeless all over the country. But when I was up in the northeast, it was the Cyrenians up on Westgate Road. There's a day centre over next to Biker Bridge. Just before Tanner's, if you know Tanner's, across the road from Tanner's is a day centre. You know, and you used to sort of walk over there for a couple of hours, go up to Cyrenians where you could use the showers, do your washing, and get something to eat there. And little things like back in the day, go sit in the library for a bit. Way back in the day, you used to have all the headphones in HMV with all the new releases. Go and spend an hour listening to music in there, and just try and kill time. Really, that's a lot of what you're doing. Kill time until you can find sort of someone whose floor you can crash on for the night time.
Was there any like really scary moments for you in that period of your life?
Oh, things scary. You know,
I can imagine. But I would imagine you were toughened up as well. And sometimes the substance abuse takes that pain away. We've seen recently in Newcastle prior to COVID. The amount of people that we saw on Spice, and I saw on Spice in the Newcastle city centre, was horrific. And a lot of these people were homeless, or certainly addicts who have maybe a communal home where they all share together and all use together, but were out on the street, completely out of their skull on Spice. And it's not nice to see. But, you know, I mean, from your perspective, was just you know, was there anything where you feared for your life, or you had a situation that you found that, you know, you couldn't really cope with?
Not really, not feared for my life. So I've got a friend. So when I slept, when I slept outside, I probably only spent about 8 out of 7, 8 years. I probably only spent, about a year and a half of that sleeping outside. But because I was a bit of a thief, I mean, I'm not glorifying it, because I used to sort of burgle shops and things like that. I would always find somewhere to break into and sleep inside of somewhere away from everybody. Whereas I've got a friend of mine, he did the first podcast that, with the podcast that I do from the outside looking in, where we talk about all these social exclusion issues. He was a rough sleeper. He slept outside, as you see in a shop doorway kind of thing. He's got horror stories. He's woke up, people setting his blankets on fire. He's woke up to people pissing on him. And the fear isn't from the other homeless people. It's from drunk people that look down on you and, think that, you've done something wrong to be there. It's, you don't deserve any respect. So, they're threatening you. You see videos all the time of people, assaulting homeless people. There was a guy a few years ago that somebody had sprayed paint all over him outside of the shop where he begged. A week later, the guy that had been sprayed, the homeless guy, killed himself. So I never really experienced it very much, but I'm very aware that it goes on. And I would say that it's mainly the people that you need to be fearful of is the general public, not the other homeless people.
Okay, we're halfway through the interview, so I am going to give a shout out to our sponsors. A big thank you to Spider VPN for all your internet security. Google Spider VPN, they come up at the top of your search list. Thanks also to skipsandbins.com, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website www.skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks also to L&G Family Funeral Directors, 01913897245, and the Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD, hemp and cannabinoid specialists, www.thegohd.com. Thanks also to Arcot Interiors for all your kitchen needs. They are based on Heaton Road in Newcastle. You can also Google them. They come up at the top of the search list. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle. Thanks also to Jab Signature, jabsignature.co.uk for making all of our flyers. If you're a first-time visitor to the channel, please subscribe. Hit the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner and you can subscribe for free. We still do 7 shows a week on this channel and a few more to boot. And also hit the thumb up under the video to like the video, click share to your social media, and drop into the comments box to post a comment on this video. You can also listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, and every good podcast provider. You can listen to us in your car, listen to us when you're out for a walk. That is the end of this public service announcement. And we're going to go into the second half looking at the positives, Ricky, because you actually turned your life around, and that is why we got you on, because we want to talk about the positives. We want to talk about how you turned your life around.
Yeah.
And it's a success story, mate. I've got to be honest, because I get sent a lot of requests. I get a lot of people sending their stories to me about, I did this and I did that. And I'm not on this channel to glorify crime and criminals. That's not what it's about. And there's nothing big and nothing clever. What I like is I like to get people on who've had a positive outcome. And my God, after the start of life you've had, mate, to turn your life around the way you have is fantastic. So, we've already painted the scene. How did you change? What was the eureka moment for you that made you think, I've got to stop this. I've got to change my life. I've got to move on. How did you do it? How did you achieve it?
So there were a few things. I was so through probation, I ended up doing a Fairbridge Trust up in Newcastle. I don't know if you've heard of the Fairbridge Trust.
I have. I have.
So I got involved with them in my late teens. So I did their sort of course, which is a lot of personal development. You go out rock climbing, you go out abseiling, lots of teamwork and stuff like that. And that started giving me stuff to do. Take me away from the situations I was in. I was still struggling with homelessness a lot. And then from there, I got involved in Rally International, which is a sort of, that's what you move on to from Fairbridge. And Rally International were amazing for me at the time. I was a YDP, which is you're an inner city sort of kid, and you go through a selection process, and the view is that you're going to go away volunteering. And at the time, I think then I would have been about 19 when I started that process, and I was probably as homeless as I got. I was constantly moving around the country. They were having to ring me up, or I was getting in touch with them and saying, right, can you send the tickets to so-and-so train station? And that was to get me to all these different courses. And then they selected me, and I went to, when I was 21, I went to Namibia for 3 months volunteering. And when I was out there, what happened is that I met a lot of there was 22 of us that were YDPs, sort of inner city, from the background that I was from. But most of the people participating in this 3-month expedition were gap year students, and dare I say it, posh kids, rich kids. They were all privately educated. Mummy and daddy were paying for them to do something. And I made friends with a group of these posh kids that I'm still friends with now. But it sort of changed my outlook on life. And, you know, all of a sudden, when I came back, by chance, a few of them that I'd become very, very good friends with were coming to Newcastle University. That's where they were doing their degrees. So I started sort of hanging around with them and their student friends. And, you know, I'd just come back from Africa. So my eyes had been opened up to what, you know, there's a big world out there. And I had a little bit more self-worth because all of a sudden, you know, I was, my circle of friends were just nicer people. And that's not criticizing the people that, you know, I've been kicking about with, but, you know, all of a sudden I wasn't hanging around the streets with all the homeless people all the time. I was sometimes, you know, it wasn't a clean break, but, you know, there was a lot of times that I was with all these students, etc. And then what happened is I got arrested one last time for assaulting a bus driver, just being an idiot, drunk, got into an argument over absolutely nothing, punched the bus driver. Somebody stood up to try and help the bus driver. I punched him as well. He was a civil servant. The bus driver crashed the bus. We were stationary, but the handbrake came off. He crashed the bus into the bus stop. Obviously, it was carnage. The police caught up with me, arrested me. It was made very clear to me in court. I nearly went to prison, and it was made very clear to me in court that this was the last chance. And the only reason I didn't go to prison is because all of those student friends of mine came to court with me and gave me a character reference. But I always remember, and this was probably the first time this has happened, my friends were really, really disappointed in me. You know, my friends that I had made were all sort of asking me, what are you playing at? Like, what are you doing with your life? And it sort of dawned on me that I had to start, you know, trying to sort things out. So slowly but surely, really, I started washing dishes, you know, bouncing from job to job. Unfortunately, my mum died when I was 25. She took her own life, but that was another thing where I was like, you know, I'm heading the same path if I don't sort myself out. And I bounced from rubbish job to rubbish job, really. Call centers, you know, I lied my way into all of them. I used to, top tip, I used to invent CVs, and I used to look for companies that had gone bust and put those on my CV saying that I'd worked for them, knowing that if anybody did due diligence, they wouldn't be able to prove that I didn't work at those companies because they didn't exist anymore. So there's a top tip for any job seekers out there.
Brilliant.
Right. So I used to do that, you know, and I was a bit of a blagger. My mates used to be my reference, and, you know, we were all confident on the phone. So if I needed a reference, they would bring my mate. He would pretend that he worked at one of these companies that had gone bust. So that sort of got me ticking along. And then I was still, I wasn't homeless, but I was never far away from homelessness. And, you know, my jobs were never long term. They were all short term contracts. So it was still it was a pretty tough sort of living. But when I was 31, I got really fed up with a job interview for the Royal Mail. I won't spin the whole story, but something happened at a job interview that really, really annoyed me, and I just had enough. And it was something that I'd always thought about. I rung my missus and just said, look, I'm going to the military careers. I'm going to the careers office. And she was a bit like dubious. And I walked in to the military careers, and I sat with all of them. And I sat with the Royal Navy and sort of explained what the crack was, and just said, look, I've made a mess of my life. I've got 42 convictions, but I haven't been in trouble for nearly a decade. Can I join? And the young lad behind the counter, who I now know was just an AB, the same, like, you know, he was just a young bod. This would have been completely way above his pay scale. He went upstairs and got a guy called Chief Caesar, who is a Geordie guy. And this big 6'4" Chief Caesar came down, and we had a chat. And he explained that he was from a family where his brothers hadn't joined the military, and they'd sort of gone down the route of people that you like to interview sometimes, Steve. Do you know what I mean? And he was saying if it wasn't through the Royal Navy, I remember he was saying if it wasn't through the Royal Navy, I would have got in trouble too. And I was like, all right. And I remember him saying, oh, no, I mean like gangster trouble. And I remember looking at the size of them and thinking, yeah, you're right, like 100%. You wouldn't have just been getting arrested for petty stuff. Do you know what I mean? But I think it was real lucky that I got him, because he backed me to the hilt. You know, he saw all my convictions. I went and got them printed off. We went over them. He was of the same mindset. He was like, they're all petty. I get it. You've made a mess of your life. I'm gonna ask for permission for you to join. He maybe hid a couple of things, and yeah, got permission for me to join. And it was one of them. I just said, look, sign me up for whatever. Just get me in as quickly as possible. Because I remember saying to him, if I don't get in, if I don't do something with my life now, this is the way my life's going to be forever. And then they let me into the Royal Navy, and I said that I was going to do 4 years to get something on my CV, and I'm leaving on April the 3rd after 13 years.
And you're leaving, but you missed a little bit out there, and you probably don't blow your own trumpet, so I'll blow it for you. You won 3 military awards for various things. One of them which included setting up a homeless charity in Somerset when you were based there. Tell us about that.
The Navy have given me, what the military's done is it put me on an even platform as everybody else, and it gave me that stability and stuff, do you know what I mean, which was lacking in life. And it gave me a platform to just do various things and find out things about myself that, you know, I hadn't had the chance to before. And it turned out I'm quite good at sort of organizing things, you know, and getting people to do stuff. It's hard to explain, but it started off with, you know, I started organizing families days for the base, and, you know, people were like, Ricky Gleeson's sorting all of that out. And I was sorting out all these different things at once. And then, you know, one of my friends, he's passed away now, sadly, but he was terminally ill, and I did a lot of sorting out for him, and I won an award for that, like an Endeavour award off the captain. And then later down the line, I was based in Yeovil, RNS Yeovil, which is an air base in Somerset, and it wasn't a deployable role. It meant that I was sort of working on this air base for a couple of years, and I, you know, got talking to some like-minded people, and we set up a homeless charity that ended up, it started off 2 pots and some food in it, dishing it out, which apparently was against all of the sort of health and safety regulations, which I found out when they came along to speak to me. But again, they helped me. Everybody sort of bought into what I was doing, and they all helped me. And I ended up accidentally setting up a fully registered homeless charity called Haven, Homeless and Vulnerable Outreach Network. And that's still going. I once it was fully registered, it became clear that my cowboy method in getting it off the ground was perfect. But if I carried on, it was going to get shut down. So I managed to find the right people to hand it over to, and I handed it over to a lady called Rachel Lees, who's an ex-lieutenant commander in the Royal Navy, and it's hers now. It's got nothing to do with me, but I picked up an award for that, which was nice. I picked up a Special Endeavour award for that. And then just before I'm leaving now, because of the podcast that I do where I've been talking and trying to raise awareness about issues like homelessness, addiction, things that have sort of, you know, I've had to deal with throughout the years, but it's branching off. We're sort of, you know, we're veering in all sorts of routes now, and it doesn't really get watched that much, but it seems to be helping the people that do watch it, and it's helping the people that are taking part. And my unit caught wind of what I was doing, and they're very supportive, and I picked up my 3rd award, which is named after the young lad my friend that died. So that was a real nice way to end my career, kind of thing. They didn't promote me though, Steve. I just want to throw that in there. Yeah, they didn't promote me.
Listen, that's an amazing achievement though, from where you were, from homeless to, you know, to that position. Just out of interest, I mean, going into the armed forces, as you did, I mean, did you struggle with the discipline? Did you, you know, I mean, you know, you didn't like school like me and discipline, etc. You rebelled against it a little bit, but did you find that a bit easier? Had you matured by then?
I've struggled here and there, but what I will say is that the reason why I struggled in school and I didn't struggle in the military, and whether this is right or wrong, in the military, there's a reason for the discipline. You're in a disciplined services. You know the crack. You know what you're signing up to. The person in front of you that is giving you orders has earned the right to give you orders. That's their rank. That's their job. I just didn't feel like that to me in school. It didn't feel like the teachers had any right to be telling me what to do. That might be completely wrong. Do you know what I mean? Because, I mean, effectively it is wrong. They're teachers. You're supposed to do what you're told. But that was a lot of the conflict in school for me. I just thought, who are you people? Like, who do you think you're talking to, kind of thing? Which, yeah, I don't know the psychology of it all, but, you know, I was a damaged young man by the time I got to school in South Shields. Whereas, like you said, I was a 31-year-old that knew I had to toe the line when I joined the forces. But I haven't been promoted.
Well, you haven't been promoted. That's what we should entitle this video. I haven't been promoted.
Anyway, there's probably a reason I haven't been promoted. It's because I struggle a little bit with some of the discipline here and there. But look, no, I just want to say, like, the Navy's been, personally for me, the Navy's been amazing. It's changed my life. I'm about to move back to the northeast. I've now got 2 little kids. My life moving back is completely different to how it was when I moved away. My kids' lives are going to be completely different to mine. The platform it gave me to sort of rebuild my life has been amazing, and it's changed everything. And I'd recommend it to anybody, that sort of lacking in direction. I always say this, even if you have got a criminal record, you can go along now and still speak to them, and they'll sort of look at it. They look at every case differently. But when I see young people just sort of drifting around, not knowing what to do in life, I just think we're just going to sign up for a bit. Even if you just do your minimum of 4 years and work out what it is that you want to do while you're off doing bits and bobs for the armed forces, do that. Some people have got a problem with the armed forces. I'm pro armed forces, so deal with it.
It works for some. It doesn't work for others. I mean, I went through a bit of a transition in my life. I was a bit of an idiot. I was getting involved in Newcastle United and knocking around with the wrong crowd like you did. And I ended up having an altercation with my dad, something I'm not particularly proud of. But I mean, we got over it. But I felt I needed discipline, and when I got to 21, and I enrolled for the Territorial Army, which I know the full-time forces often used to frown upon the TAs, part-time soldiers, etc. But I went into that, and I tried to do that for my own purposes, to try and discipline myself, to try and get myself back on track. And it wasn't for me. I've got to be honest. I couldn't cope with the discipline. I was easily targeted by the sergeant majors who made it a point of Now I've watched so many programs and spoken to so many people in the forces. It was deliberate. I can see what they were trying to do, but I rebelled against it, and I didn't like it. And I didn't hang around long, but I give it a go, and it just wasn't for me. It takes a special person with special mentality to be able to do that and take that discipline.
Do you know what? Before one of the big reasons that I ended up going into the careers officer is that in my late 20s, I got fit through boxing training, which gave me
another similarity we've got.
Yeah. So I ended up going through a drugs charity. They had this session, Fit Club in Newcastle, where he would do, a boxing circuit with us. And I started going to that once a week to start with. And I remember the first time I went, being absolutely horrified at how unfit I was, and then just challenging myself to be able to keep going back until I could get all the way around the circuit without stopping. So I started sort of setting myself challenges, that self-discipline of doing that. And then once I could get all the way without stopping, something happened inside of me. The addictive personality took over. By the time I joined the forces at 31, I was training 5-6 days a week. I was sparring loads. I'd never boxed competitively because I couldn't be bothered to make weight and things like that. It's a big regret of mine that I wish that I'd just gone and sort of had a few bouts. But I joined the Navy through boxing training. I think there was about 46 of us during basic training. I was the oldest there by a long way. I was in the top 10 fitness. I was as fit as a fiddle, and I got a lot. And I am getting back into it slowly but surely. I'm very big on healthy body, healthy mind.
Yeah, me too, mate. Me too. I think as you get older, you realise that, you only get one crack at life, but you only get one body as well. And that's it. Yeah. I do want to ask you about the BBC documentary, because when you sent me a few notes about your life story, what was it called? And is there any way we can watch that? Because I would be interested in seeing it. It was about an aircraft carrier.
Yeah, it's called Britain's Biggest Warship, and it was the first season by Chris Terrell, and it was just, it was as they were being built and taken out to sea for the first time. Chris was on there. He did the 57-year-old commander or something. He's the old guy that's got a green beret. He does all the forces stuff. But yeah, he was just he was a member of crew. He was in uniform and everything, filming a documentary. And it started off that they saw me in the gash compartment, and everybody was reaching because we have to empty the ship of all the rubbish sometimes. And everybody was reaching, and I was absolutely fine because I used to be a bin man in Gateshead at one point. So it just didn't bother me. And then he got talking to me, and then he found out about my past, and then that was it. They had me sat on a bed talking about, my past and stuff. But you know what? The episode I was in is really hard to find online, and I think I know why, but I'll tell you off camera.
All right, okay. All right, okay, that's great. All right, the last 10 minutes we're going to dedicate to what you're doing now, and you've already mentioned you're coming back to Newcastle, which is great. In the words of Busker, you're coming home, Newcastle.
I am coming home. Yeah, I am.
And I'll put all the links in the chat below and in the description box. But the charity that you're going to be involved with is sportstrader.com. So the website is www.sportsradar.com.
Sports Trader.
sportstrader.com, and you'll see that below. Tell us a little bit about it. Tell us who's behind it, and tell us why you've been chosen to be involved.
Yeah, so when I was doing these podcasts, we got talking to a guy called Lance Haggith, who'd helped my mate. The first podcast that we did was with a friend of mine called Earl Charlton, who works down at Northeast Homeless, down at the Fish Quay. He's the lad that I was talking about. He spent 18 years. He was injecting heroin into his groin. He was, by all accounts, dead and buried. Lance Haggith is a really successful businessman from the Watford area. He did Lance of London, which in the 80s was sort of clothing all the pop stars with, their old Boy George and all the leather that you see them wearing. That was him. He's done loads. If you Wikipedia him, he's done absolutely loads. And then he was also a basketball player and a basketball coach. And he says that after making lots of money, he sort of looked at his own kids and saw all the sporting opportunities that he could afford to send them off, and didn't think it was fair that other people couldn't get those sporting opportunities. He's friends with AJ. He's personal friends with AJ, actually. So we talked about that. And then I sort of set up another podcast with him. We did one in the early days, and then I set up another one with him and got talking to him about Sports Trader, and he explained it properly. It's a charity shop, by all accounts, that sells donated sports equipment, be it secondhand or donated from clubs, be it, from school collections or people just dropping it off. But it's sports equipment that tends to sell for £5 each, and they're on the high street. And then all of the proceeds that get made from that then get used to create sporting opportunities in the local area. So I got talking to him and was saying, how many shops have you got? I think you've got 11 shops around the country. He'd made it up to Hull. And then I said, are you planning to go to Newcastle? And he said he'd love to go to Newcastle. It's just about finding the right people. Obviously, with my background and sort of some of the stuff that I've did, I asked him whether my friend Ian Sutcliffe, who is a businessman from the northeast of England, he's another adopted Geordie, loves Newcastle United. He's from Bolton, lives in Wickham. Right. Yeah, so me and him then sort of pitch Lance. Basically, we set up a Zoom call and pitched him and just said, look, his business experience, my background, and sort of the knowledge of the people that you're trying to help, can we take it to Newcastle for you? Lance is fully behind us. He said, yeah, you crack on. That's it. You're sort of not free reign, but, that's what we're running with. So from there, that's the plan. We are, now looking for premises in Newcastle to open a Sports Trader, spelled AID. We're going to open a shop in Newcastle. Hopefully, we'd like it to be, in the city centre somewhere, preferably in Eldon Square. I'll just throw that out there. So we're going to set up one of these shops and start taking collections. We've already had a few free collections from some various sports clubs. We're always trying to get more in. I'd like to sort of get some boxing clubs involved. Where I'm moving, I won't say where I'm moving because I don't want people coming to my house, but I'm moving near Forest Hall. I know Lewis Ritson boxes from Forest Hall, so I want to go along there and stuff. Get as much sports equipment in as we possibly can. Also, another thing that they do is the people that they hire in the shop, it's made up of volunteers and staff members. Lance is big on giving ex-offenders a chance in life, do you know what I mean? And saying, right, come and earn some honest money and, take some time out. That's the essence of it, really. It's a charity shop. We're going to use the proceeds to set up sports clubs and assist other sports clubs and, get some coaching opportunities for kids that otherwise wouldn't usually get those opportunities. Little things. We've got World of Sport TV have sort of caught wind of us, and they've become our sort of official partner, sponsor, if you like. They're going to start buying equipment from the shop to then raffle off to their subscribers and donate the money back to us, kind of thing, which is sort of keep the ball rolling. Anybody that's watching, if you're part of sports clubs that can donate equipment to us that we can then sell on to anyone can come in and buy it. Do you know what I mean? It's not for people that can't afford it. Anybody that's buying is helping us out. And then the proceeds that we take from the equipment we sell, we will then put back into the community. And like I said, it's a national charity. You can go online. Lance has got them all over the country. It's a charity that I really like the sound of because of the fact that I'm a sports fan.
Yeah, I mean, there's the website there underneath my picture there, and you can see it. So just get yourself onto that website. That gives you all the indication you need. We're
on Twitter as Sports Trader Newcastle. I think I'm on as Toon Trader, I think it is. And our podcast is on as Outside In Pods on Twitter. If you don't mind, I just throw these out there. If you go onto YouTube and look for From the Outside In podcasts that come up. Neon Writing, that's the podcast channel, and we have a Facebook group, Sports Trade in Newcastle, and if you join that, that's where we sort of post asking for people to help us along. So we're trying, it's one of them, you know the crack. I'm trying to find ins to every sort of nook and cranny. You know, my mate that was in the Navy used to play for Blythe Spartans. He was on Football Manager. That's his claim to fame. But he, I've asked him to try and get me in. I know, Steve, you mentioned that you know a certain Amanda Staveley, so maybe talk about getting Newcastle United. But we'd love to get Newcastle United involved. I'd like to get the women's team involved as well. Do you know what I mean? Because we're really about promoting all sports, women's boxing, women's football, all of it. So yeah, that's what I'm bringing back up as soon as I get out the Royal Navy in one piece, which isn't as easy as it sounds. And yeah, that's my plans in life at the moment.
I mean, look, just going back to your previous life just before we finish, and one of the lines that was in your message to me when we're talking about doing this was that your focus in life now is to make sure that when you die, your kids are going to be proud of what you've done with your life. Yeah. And I guarantee that there will be, because what you've done is it's a remarkable turnaround. But looking back to what happened to you, the drug abuse, the petty crime, the homelessness. If there's somebody watching these podcasts, and I know because I see people on the streets when I'm walking around Newcastle who come up to me who are down on their luck, who are homeless, some of them, who aren't having the best of times, who say to me, "I've seen your podcast" or whatever, and I speak to these people, and I know some of them will be watching. What advice could you give to somebody like that watching now about how they can get out of that situation they're in? What is the first step you would tell them to, or give them advice to do? So
never accept it. Never accept that that's your lot in life. Do you know what I mean? And is that, never give up hope. Just don't accept it. Don't think that this is the way that your life's going to be forever. And that's to everybody. Do you know what I mean? When you're a kid, when you're young, you think that the way life is how it's going to be forever. It isn't. So don't accept your lot. Get fit. That's a big one. It's impossible to be homeless and sober, in my opinion. So I never judge anybody for the fact that they might be using or they might be drinking too much when they're homeless. But try and get to a gym a few times a week and just start the ball rolling and exercise as much for your mental health as anything. And that will eventually start helping you out. And it might sound weird, you've got to learn to like your own company, and sort of look after yourself first and foremost, not at the detriment of other people, but when you're down in the bottom, you've got to learn to like your own company. Don't accept that that's your lot and start trying to get fit. I guarantee if you did those three things that you'll get somewhere. Great advice, a great podcast. Thoroughly enjoyed that, mate. Thank you for coming to me and asking, to be part of the show. Good luck with what you're doing. Hopefully, you'll be able to help you in due course, mate. Certainly, never be afraid to drop us an inbox and ask us if I can help. And just thanks for being a fantastic guest, Ricky Gleeson. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you for having me, mate.